Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Naja here. I know it has been a minute. It has been a minute. I don't think I recorded in maybe 2 weeks. It's been a minute. And so I had to make myself sit down even after a busy morning. For those of you who do not know, I also do photography and I am a professional makeup artist. So I kind of just ventured into the photography aspect seriously over the past, I would say, less than a year. But I've been doing or started photography back in 2018, took a break after COVID. And so this year, the Lord spoke to me about being serious and intentional about the things He wanted me to go into. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm being very intentional. I'm being obedient in some things, not everything, because there are some things that the Lord has spoken that I have just not been able to fall into as I should. And a part of those is what I'm about to talk about right now. So many of you may have already saw the video that I did. It probably was 2 months ago now when I did the video about losing my birthright and the spirit of gluttony. Okay, so many of you definitely resonated with that message. So many of you dealt with the same issue, and many of you don't know, because I didn't speak about it anytime after that message, just how much I dealt with it and just how much it was so hard for me to actually walk in obedience in that word. It was so hard, and still is hard. To the point where the Lord had to come and speak to me about it a few more times, because I didn't realize just how much I was battling with that spirit. And it was like, wow, I really have a problem. I can't put down food when I really intentionally need to put down food. So I have a problem. So needless to say, I basically was really dealing with the idea or the issue of the Lord wanting me, or feeling that the Lord wanted me to go in the direction of creating a fitness portion of my channel, because at that point that meant I would be held accountable. Right at that point. And it's not that I didn't want to be held accountable, but I think at that point was when I would have had to actually recognize, hey, there are other people who are depending on you being consistent with this. And so once you started, there's no going back. And that's what I battled with. The Lord had even given me the plan. He had already given me the write-up on how to execute what needed to be discussed, things that needed to be done. But I just couldn't find it in me to take that step. So what I'm going to do, there's 2 words, okay, since that one that you guys saw 2 months ago. There's 2 words, not 1 but 2, that the Lord gave me in regards to that message. The first one was back in May, okay? I'm sorry, not May, we're in May. It was March the 6th. So the first word that I gave in regards to selling your birthright must have been in February. The follow-up to this that God gave me, and He spoke to me about it, was more so for people who really were dealing with exactly the same thing. And this word was for a lot of those people, okay? So I'm going to combine the 2 since they are the same topic. I'm going to combine the 2, and I'm going to try and zip through it so that I don't have an hour-long message for you guys, okay? And so On May the 6th, he basically titled this, "Are you complaining about God's choice of food for you?" So many of you, after seeing the first video that I did, and if you haven't seen it, I recommend that you do, okay? And it's titled Spirit of Gluttony, How I Almost Lost My Birthright. And it was done about 2 months ago. So I definitely recommend you see that first. Again, he started me out in Genesis 25:29 to let me know that he was referencing how Esau sold his birthright. He immediately went into Numbers 11. Okay, and at that time I was seeing 11:11, and 11:11 in the Greek concordance means murmuring. Okay, it means complaining. Okay, the people complain, which is Numbers 11. The murmuring of the people had now become a contagious habit, an attitude mirroring distrust. They wept, similar to what would be like someone mourning the death of a loved one. Their craving is associated with gluttony, lust, and for anything other than a one food diet. One food diet. Their selective memory recalled the meats, but not the miseries of Egypt. So a lot of us, when we're going through our, fight of trying to do right, trying to honor the temple, which is God's temple, and do the way that the Lord told us to do, we tend to only remember what it feels like when we are able to indulge, but we forget the consequences and the things that we go through afterwards, what we feel afterwards, the results of disobedience afterwards. We forget about all of that. Okay? You recalled the array of foods you were eating, but forget how you felt when you looked in the mirror, or how you have endless bloat, gas, constipation, swelling in the feet and legs, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, bad breath, no sexual appetite if you're married, and the list goes on. Right? That is described me to a T in reference to the level of bondage that I was in. I have since made a decision, okay, to walk in obedience. But the bondage that I was in, no matter how many times I would walk in front of the mirror and look at myself and hate the way I looked, no matter how many times I would not be able to fit in something that I was wanting to wear, no matter how many times the Lord had given me signs that I was walking in disobedience, it did not stop me from still desiring to eat the things that made me feel that way, or eat the things that I know I was supposed to be staying away from. That bondage was real. Oh, it was real. Okay? The appearance of a prophet in 1 Kings 13:2. We went right to the altar where Jeroboam worshipped false gods. He prophesied that a king from the lineage of David would come to cleanse the altar of its pagan sacrifices. What this means is the spirit of Beelzebub is what is attributed to the deadly sin of gluttony. Gluttony is a disease of the mind. It attacks the mind. Because at the time that you are making a decision to indulge, to eat things that you know you should not be, it is things that come into the mind that tell you that you're hungry or tell you that you have a craving. And it is the spirit of Beelzebub. It is not just eating excessively, it is excess of anything, actually. Okay, so glutton typically is in relation to your choice of food and eating, right? Overeating, excessive. but it can also be excess of anything. Job 15, verse 27 through 35. And the Message version reads, until you take the message from the prophet and destroy the altar, you may lose the weight, but never get ahead. Okay? Again, let me read that again. Until you take the message from the prophet and destroy the altar, you may lose the weight, but never get ahead. The altar has to be destroyed. The altar has to be destroyed. So what this means is there are plenty of people that may do certain things to lose the weight outside of a spiritual, place. Like go and take Ozempic, or go and do like I did a few years ago and take phentermine. These are things that don't really require you to do much but pop a pill. And so if you do not destroy the altar, if you do not destroy the spirit associated with why you're dealing with it in the first place, you'll never get ahead, and you'll end up back in the same place that you are. The Lord is needing for you to think about the meal time. It is supposed to be total nourishment. It is not supposed to be satisfying your flesh. It's supposed to nourish your body. And for many of you, your eating habits are actually affecting your menstrual cycles. Doubt turned into faith is what needs to happen. There is a renewal, a return, or returning to God that needs to take place. A total renewal in that area of your life. The reason God says the road is narrow is because he is pruning even the remnant to pick up the biblical expectations of life that have been put down, and observe them all. Observe them all. That includes the feasts, the Sabbath, your diet, etc. Many things like the feasts and honoring the Sabbath on the correct day, which is Saturday. Making sure that your body, which is God's temple, is nourished. He is calling even the remnant, not even, and the reason I say even is because I believe that a lot of people feel as though because they're called, that means that they're in a position where they don't have to change anything, like as if there's nothing wrong with them, as if there is no growth, there isn't any pruning, that God called them because they're where they're supposed to be. No ma'am, no sir. When the Lord called me, it was in the beginning. No pruning, no nothing had been done. So literally, even till today, I am still being pruned. I am still being cultivated to look more like Christ, to look more like I'm supposed to look for the call that God has me prepared for, or that he's preparing me for. Okay, so the remnant, he's starting with the church. He's starting with the remnant. The feasts, he's been telling me this, and it's in my notes. It is in word that I should be teaching. One thing I must say is that I am still learning when it comes to those things, because I was never taught those things. It was never something that we practiced in my household. It was never something that even my church practiced. So never talked about, all the different feasts, what they meant and how to practice them. But the Lord is saying we need to go back to doing it his way, not the way that the world has trained our minds to think that it's supposed to be. So let me keep going because I don't want to go too far off of topic. Romans 6:12, therefore do not let sin reign in your mortal body, that you should obey it in its lusts. When the sin associated and being a glutton is a sin, okay? When that sin reigns in your body, you will obey it. Reigning means that it is in control. So when that sin of gluttony is in control of your body, you're going to obey the lusts of that sin, which is overeating. And when we say overeating, it's very easy for us to just think that, okay, we're overeating. What's the worst that can happen? We're just going to get fat. No. When the enemy knows that there is any area of your life that is a weakness that he can use to tear you down, that's what he's going to do. Whether it's gluttony, whether it is some form of unforgiveness, whether it is a sexual immorality, no matter what it is, any open area where he feels is a weakness of yours, he's going to use that to tear you down. So within the case of gluttony, it would be basically allowing you to continue to eat yourself until your death, creating dis-ease in your body, inflammation, cancer, cholesterol, heart disease. I mean, there's a number of, those are just the main ones we know about, really, right? So, but there's so many that a bad diet can create within your body. So many different issues that it can create. And so that's his goal, is to tear you down completely. You might think, okay, I might gain a little bit of weight. I can just go lose the weight. But it's not just about the weight. It's about, what are you doing to your body? What are you doing to God's temple? What are you allowing Satan to have you do to your temple? Which will cause you to go into an area of not even being able to be obedient in what God has called you to do. How are you going to do that if you are ill, if you're sick? Many of us don't need a facelift. Many of us need a heart transplant. A lot of us, because of the things that are going on within our heart, is the reason why we even deal with the spirit of gluttony. We need a heart transplant. Mercy does not give us what we deserve. Grace gives us what we do not deserve. So we need to be consistently thanking the Lord for his grace and his mercy in this situation, because many of us have made this mistake and gone in circles so long that, you know, we're like, probably feel that the Lord should have given up on us a long time ago. But his grace, obedience, okay? Be doers and not just hearers of the word, as it says in James 1:21. Don't just hear this word. Take this word and allow it to push you into the area of being obedient, following what the Lord has said that we need to follow, okay? Go to the Lord and confess. Go to the Lord and confess your sin in this area. Repent for it. Repent for it. Now that was it for the message that I received on March the 8th. But on May the 2nd was when I received the second portion. Okay? Now I always give my example of how this affected me. So I'm going to give my example. I'm going to put myself out there like I did on the last one, okay, on how I ended up getting this word. And so it was pretty brutal. It was brutal. It was brutal, okay? So on May the 2nd, this is titled The Lord's Second Warning Against the Spirit of Gluttony. When actuality, it's not the second, it's the third. And it says, what are you eating? Again, Esau sells his birthright. Rebekah was told by the Lord, 2 nations were in her womb. One with Jacob was the Israelites, and Esau was the Edomites. When it came to the dietary laws back then, obedience of a nation was being set apart. Okay? Obedience of a nation set apart. So as a nation of Israel, as believers in Christ, we are called to be set apart. We are called to be set apart by being obedient to the Lord, not doing like the world. Levitical dietary law carefully outlined what God wanted the Hebrews to eat, which was clean foods, and not eat unclean foods. Under the new covenant, we receive God's blessing by grace, not by works. So following the Mosaic Old Testament laws concerning food consumption is not necessary. However, self-control is important. Self-control is important. Also, many of the previous unclean foods from the Levitical laws are not considered healthy foods by dietitians even today. Okay? Making healthy choices and appropriate portion sizes helps us to honor Him who has chosen our bodies as His temple. So it's not just about eating proper foods, but portion sizes. Portion sizes. I can remember back when I was successful with losing weight and eating right a few years ago, I tried everything. The 5-bite diet, eating off of a saucer. And if you can be consistent in those things, it definitely works, because what it does is shrinks your stomach. And then you're eating healthy, small portions. And it did work. So portion sizes are important. Deuteronomy 20 verse 8, the last exemption was for the coward. Okay, listen carefully. To remove the fearful and faint-hearted from the battle, ranks would protect the morale of other soldiers. So I don't know if I wrote that correctly because it sounds weird, but basically in order to protect the morale or to protect the other soldiers from also falling into fear and being faint-hearted, they would basically remove them. They would remove them from battle. Fearful in the Greek concordance means someone who has lost their moral fortitude or the courage to follow the Lord. Many of us who are believers in Christ, who are on assignment, who are fearful or who have lost the courage to follow the Lord in the things that He's called for them to do, He's moving you out the way. And I was like, that's not about to happen to me. You're not moving me out the way, Lord. I'm getting it together, okay? But many who are in certain positions but refuse to be obedient, refuse to do what He's calling to do, when these are requirements. These are not suggestions by the Lord. They're requirements. He's moving them out of the battle, because we are in a battle, okay? We have a warfare, or not warfare, we have a war that we're fighting. And so He is removing people. If you're not going to listen, and if you've fallen into a place of being fearful and faint-hearted, and in terms of this word, not mine, a coward, which is the same word, same meaning rather, then He's moving you out of the way. It can also refer to an excessive fear of losing. So many people, like I just even said when I just came in, that there was a fear of failing when it came to me starting that portion of my channel in regards to the weight loss. Because at that point, once I started, I had to complete it. And so I did. I had a fear of losing or failing in that area. Being afraid to start this new eating journey for fear of not sticking with it. And that was for me, okay? Some of you have Delilahs. Listen so carefully to this, okay? Some of you have Delilahs tempting you. Samson was a morally weak man with uncontrollable sexual desires. And in our case, it's not sexual, it's uncontrollable eating desires. But this teasing temptress coaxed and cajoled Samson out of his position. So many of us have Delilahs that are in our lives that may not be doing it intentionally like Delilah was, but they are an influence in your life into why you are not able to be obedient to the Lord in this area. There was a fortune waiting for her if she could discover the secret of his strength. For us, our true strength is not recognized because the enemy has found our weakness. After she cut his hair, which was the source of his strength, with the heartlessness, she watched as he struggled out of a deep sleep, thinking he would fend off his attackers as easily before, only to discover his strength was gone. His strength was gone. The person may not be doing this on purpose, as I said before, okay? So how are we going to fight off our attackers in warfare if our spirit man is weak because we keep feeding the flesh what it wants? How? The only way that we are properly in position to fight a spiritual war is to be led by the spirit and not by the flesh. But if our spirit man is weak, and our spirit man is weak if we have an issue with this, because that means that you even have an issue with fasting. Fasting is what builds up the spirit man and weakens the flesh. Okay? The enemy has found your source of weakness and soon will look to destroy you, as did Samson. Unclean foods with no self-control will kill you. Let me say that again. Unclean foods with no self-control will kill you. Psalm 34:6, the poor man cried out, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of his troubles. And the angel of the Lord encamps around all those who fear him and delivers them. So the Lord wants to deliver you from this. One thing I can say is, yeah, it was hurtful. It was very hurtful going through being rebuked by the Lord. But you know what? I was also happy because what does the word say? The Lord corrects who he loves. And because he's giving grace. You think he didn't know that you were going to struggle with this before he told you about it? Before he told you that you were in error? Did you think he was just going to tell you that you were in error, give you one opportunity to get it right, and then just cut you off? No. Proverbs 28:9, those who do not listen to God can't expect God to listen to them. Verse 8, one who turns away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer is an abomination. That is one thing we do not want to see happen. We do not want to see this happen. God will deliver you. But he has to see that you are pushing as hard as you can to get it right. That you're not just hearing the word that he's giving you and then ignoring it and doing your own thing. Okay? Repent and know. As it says in Matthew 9:22, be of good cheer, daughter, your faith has made you well. Jesus said, make room, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping. Many did not believe until Jesus took her hand and she arose. So start confessing. Start confessing this, that the Lord is going to take your hand and cause you to rise from your slumber and take your priestly position. The lamp of the body, Luke 11:33. No one has lit a lamp and then put it in a secret place or under a basket, but on a lampstand. No one has lit a lampstand and put it and covered it up, right? It goes on the lampstand. I'm sorry. No one has lit a lamp and put it under a basket and hid it. It goes on a lampstand where it can be seen, where it can provide light. The lamp of the body is the eye. I'll address this in a second. The eye is reference to the eye of the soul, okay? The eye gives light to the body and the several members of it by which they are guided and directed. The light of the soul and the guide to all the powers and facilities of it. So when the eye is single, the whole body also is full of light. As when the eye is free from vicious humors and its sight is clear, the whole body reaps advantage of it and perfectly illuminated. So when the eye of the understanding is opened and enlightened by the Spirit of God into the truths of the gospel and to the glory of Christ in them, the whole soul is filled with light, joy, and comfort. Okay? Many people in New Age like to use that scripture and then flip it for their own benefit by saying, you know, the lamp of the body is the eye, and when your eye is single, meaning like your third eye, which has nothing to do with that, as you just heard me read, it's clearly talking about the eye of the soul. It's freely talking about, is your eye free from vicious humors? And is your sight clear? Is your sight focused on Christ? When that happens, your spiritual gifts, you'll be able to be equipped properly in order to operate in your spiritual gifts. Many of us who deal with this issue of gluttony, we deal with not being able to properly operate in our gifts because we're operating through our flesh, right? Our gifts are enhanced when we fast. Our gifts are enhanced and increased when we're being able to be led by the Spirit more than the flesh. So again, be obedient in this will work out for your favor in regards to your spiritual gifts. And you will all have your personal testimonies. I'm believing it. Your personal testimonies of faithfulness to the Lord in this area. Faithfulness to the Lord in this area. I am not going down that path anymore. I'm not going to allow the enemy to take me into a space of continued disobedience. We cannot continue to go into that space. One last thing, and then I'm going to let you go. Even after getting that word, which was on May the 2nd, which lets you know just how recent I battled with this. The next day, I still ate seconds of food that I should not have been eating. And you know what the Lord gave me? A dream, a warning dream. In this warning dream, it was very simple, but my foot was distorted, swollen, the toes looked disfigured, and there were maggots inside of the foot. The foot represents a messenger, one who is giving the good news, a ministry. The maggots represented disobedience. Okay, disobedience, death. So the Lord was like, he showed me, I'm giving you grace, woman of God. But if you don't take these messages seriously, this is what's going to happen to you. Maggots represent decay. All right? And unless you want your purpose, your promises, your ministry to be decayed and die, you must walk in obedience. And that I am doing. Okay, so y'all pray for me. I'm going to get there, and I am there. It's just a very new path that I am being consistent on. And I'm doing good, actually. I've already lost 3 pounds. So we're getting there, okay? So now it's time for you guys to follow suit, for those of you who were like me and struggling. All right? I love you guys, and I'm going to end here. I will see you in my next video.